What's up, everybody? If you're watching this, that means the most important day in the year has come around, and that would be Mother's Day. So we have a cookie kit here, but before we get started on this, I'm gonna need you guys to go grab a few different things for me. So we need something, some sort of tablecloth, some old newspapers to put down, just to keep from getting the area messy, right? We need a pair of scissors, something pointy, like some toothpicks, because we're gonna make mistakes, and those will help us fix them. Some paper towels, napkins, whatever's more convenient for you. A bowl for our sprinkles, if you wanna use sprinkles, you don't have to. And last but not least, our practice sheet, which is where we're gonna get started today. Go ahead and grab a color, any color. I'm gonna use green. And cut the tip, I'd say we're outlining, so keep it thin, probably the width of a toothpick. We want it pretty thin so it comes out nice and light like so. And I'm just gonna go in here. Make sure the tip never touches the paper or the cookie once we get there. And you set it down. Like I said, don't touch. And then when you get to the end of your line, just press down and lift up. And we're finished. I'm gonna do the curly cues now. And there's no need to rush it, you know. It's Mother's Day, we're all relaxing. No need to do it too quickly. And notice how I'm taking my time. My tip didn't touch the paper and it makes a pretty smooth line, right? And now circles are actually some of the harder shapes, so I definitely suggest practicing these the most, because it's very difficult to get a perfect circle. And like I said, no need to rush it, because that will probably just end up ruining your cookie and you'll have to redo certain parts, or it'll end up wasting your time. But once you're done with the practice sheet, I'm going to introduce the cookie shapes we have. So for Mother's Day, we have a leaf, which in the cookie kit is actually a bit larger, like this one. We have this flower here, a pretty rose, another flower, we have this mason jar, and then we have this group of leaves. I don't even know what to call it. A bushel? I don't know, but they're leaves. We'll get to that later. Okay, people, so we're gonna get started on these cookies. So when we're decorating, we usually do it in a 3-step system. We start with outlining, which is that thin line we used on the practice sheet. And then we're gonna fill it in with our icing. We call that flooding. And then we're gonna give it a while to dry, and that's when the fun part comes. And we're gonna put in all our nice little details, and our cookie should be finished. So let's get started. I like to usually cut all my bags before I get started, so I'll give them those little toothpick size holes for my outlining, just so I don't have to do each one before every individual cookie. And then, once I get these out of the way, I'm gonna start on this blue flower here. I don't know what kind of flower it is, but it's pretty, so we're gonna do it. So most of these are relatively simple shapes. I always start at a corner, because you don't want to start in the middle of a line, you know? So I'll kind of start where 2 lines would meet, loop around like so. And shapes like this are always fun because they're so repetitive, and it does actually get kind of relaxing after a while. So that was pretty easy, right? After this, I'm going to move on to the pink one. It's pretty much the same concept, except there are 6 petals instead of 5. So I start at one of those corners there, come around like so. And you can see I kind of messed up here. I lost my grip, so I'm just going to go back. curve around, fix that straight line, and it's better. Okay, so now I'm gonna grab my yellow and move on to this rose here. You can do it any color you'd like. I'm gonna do yellow. I think it looks nice, but it's all personal preference. So I'm gonna start, I think in this corner here, loop around like so, come down here, and bring it here. And here, I actually kind of loop this around too far. So if this happens, you can scrape it off like so. That's what the toothpicks are for. And normally it's good to let it dry a little, but this was just a smaller mistake, so I'm just gonna do it now while I'm thinking of it. Then you can grab your icing, go back in, and fix any mistakes you made. So I won't go down quite as low as I did the first time. Then you're gonna grab your green for the leaf, and just follow the line. Put that little design up there, and it'll look real nice later when we're adding that detailing in there. And then for this bushel of leaves, we're gonna use this white here. So I didn't cut mine very thick, so I'm gonna cut it. Alright, I think we're good to go, yep. Alright, so this one is one of the trickier ones just because it's got so many different twists and turns in it, but like usual, I'm gonna start at one of these corners, just follow my lines. Like I said, these are all relatively easy shapes, but they're gonna look beautiful in the end for Mother's Day, which is what we want. And now I'm gonna move on to this big green leaf we've got here, which kind of looks very plain and simple at first, but when we do go in later and add that detailing, it's actually gonna look really nice because you can do a lot of different designs with the stems and the leaves, or those different veins you see. So it's actually a pretty fun process. As you can see, I messed up there, but it doesn't really matter because we're going to be going over and flooding it anyways. And then last, I'm going to do this mason jar here. And with the detailing, we usually do this one just with all blue, but like with the rest of the cookies, we have that freedom, you know, we can go over it in different colors, we can do whatever we want, you know, anything that we think is going to make our mothers happy. Okay, so now that all of our outlining is finished, we're going to go ahead and move on to the flooding. So when we do this, we're actually going to cut these bags a little wider. You don't need to technically, but it goes a lot quicker and it looks much better if you do. So I'll cut it, it's kind of personal preference depending on how quickly you want it to come out. I usually don't put it too thick, but just wide enough so it's coming out in a sort of full fluid motion. And with these flowers, something fun I like to do, I usually just kind of do small circles where each of these petals are. And once again, I make sure my tip isn't touching the cookie or anything, and I'll kind of blend it in with the tip of my bag. Move on to the next flower here. And a lot of times when we're flooding, the cookie might have different spots of the icing sticking up. You know, or if it overflows, we can always fix those mistakes with the toothpicks. But I'm just going around, I'm kind of taking my time, you know, I'm blending it all together, making sure it's not overflowing. And then once I've finished my last petal, I usually just move into the middle, put a big circle in here, and blend it all together. And it doesn't really matter how you do it, as long as the icing's getting in here, really. It's not that big of a deal, but sometimes it's nice to just change it up a bit, you know, make it fun. Once I'm done with that, I'll grab my toothpick. You know, see these spots sticking up? I'll kind of swirl that around, get them to fall back down. These areas where I didn't go out quite far enough, I'll push the icing, get it all the way to the edge. And we should be done with this flower after that. Now for the pink. Once again, I'm going to cut this wider, like I did the last one. And it's the same thing pretty much. I'm just going to do all my circles, all my petals in the beginning because I think it's fun. And there's no rush. We don't want to mess these up. You know, you don't want overflowing cookies. You can't be decorating a flower and have it looking messy, you know. This is Mother's Day. They have to be absolutely perfect. Because what's more important than our mothers? Mom, I hope you're watching this. But I'm just going around, I'm taking my time, blending it all in, making my circles. Now that I'm on the last petal, I do the same thing I did with the first blue flower. I'm just going to make this circle in the middle and blend it in. And once I'm finished with that, once again I grab my toothpick. I'll get a new one, a clean one. Kind of fix these points sticking up. Any areas I didn't go far enough. And that should be good. And now for this rose. It's pretty much the same shape, just 4 petals sticking out instead of 5 or 6. I guess not technically petals. It'll look a lot more like a rose in the end when we add that detailing after all this dries. But I'll make these big circles here. Blend it in together. Move on over here. And it's good that earlier I went in and fixed this outline here, because if I left it where it was, it would probably overflow. I think my flood would run over and I'd have to fix it with the toothpick. It'd look kind of messy, wouldn't look like a rose, and I'd be very sad. But I come in the middle here, at my last circle, and this is the only shape actually with 2 colors that we have to flood on the same one. So I'm going to fix these blemishes in here. Any points sticking up, kind of swirl around until it falls down. And it doesn't have to be perfect because we do go in with that detailing later and put designs over this, but you know, we still like it looking nice. Then I'm going to grab my green here, which is still thin from doing the outlining. And grab my scissors, cut it wide, and go ahead and fill in this leaf here, just a small patch of green, nothing too hard about it. Make sure I blend all that color in together, and try not to put too much on because it could overlap and mix with the yellow, and it would give you this kind of ugly mixture of colors that we probably don't want on a rose. So once we're done with all these flowers, I'm going to grab my white, cut this one wide, and get the background ready for this stem of leaves that we're doing. I don't know what you call this group of leaves, but it looks nice. In this one, I do a bit differently. I kind of follow the outlining. You can start in the middle if you'd like, but with jagged shapes like these, I usually start on the outside, roughly follow my original outlining, just bring it around until I filled most of it in. And I'm running low, so I had to squeeze some more down to the end, but once I'm happy with the amount of icing I have in there, I'm just gonna go in with the tip, kind of mix it all up together. And it might look messy at first, but you know, it settles because it's so wet. And since we cut it thicker, more is coming out, so it's gonna blend together. It's not gonna finish like this. Once we get all this out, I'm gonna grab my toothpick, try and get in here before it dries too much. Fix these kind of sharp points sticking up. We don't really want to bite into that. Make sure all my lines are to the edge. There's a small spot here I gotta fix. And I think our leaf background is ready to go. And now, moving on to the big leaf. And this one is actually pretty fun to flood. I usually start down at the stem here, fill that in, and then I like to just follow the shape all the way around. And just do that until I have the whole thing filled. And there are better ways to do it. There are quicker ways, more efficient ways, but we're just trying to have fun, am I right? And this is fun to me, so I like to do my leaves like this. And once I have all my color down, like I did with the last shape, I'm going to go ahead, mix all this green together. And it looks messy, but like I said, it'll settle and it's going to look real nice in the end. Once I have all that down, I grab my toothpick once again, go in here, fix all these spots I don't like, make sure this one goes to the edge. And we're done with our leaf. Okay, and now to move on to our last shape to flood, we have the mason jar, which actually, it's this size here in the video, but the one you have in your cookie kit that you got from us is actually much larger. I'd say probably twice as big, so it's going to be much funner to do. But anyways, I'm going to grab this blue, cut it a bit wider. And obviously I don't have as much to flood as you guys do, but you know, it's the same concept. You can do however you like really, but I usually start at the top. I cut this one pretty thick actually, but start at the top. I'm going to fill in this cap first. And then just move down, kind of follow the rough outline of the mason jar. Get my lines down so then I can go in after like this and just kind of blend it all together. And I'm hoping this one doesn't overflow. I cut this bag a little too thick, I think, so a lot more icing came out than I was expecting, but we should be okay. If something does go wrong, I can always use that trusty toothpick and fix it. But now that we're finishing up this flooding, like I said, it might take you a little longer because your mason jar is quite a bit bigger than mine. But I'm going to finish these little spots sticking up like I have been. Make sure I'm to the edge. And once that's over with, I'm going to let these sit for probably 30, maybe 45 minutes until it loses that wet, glossy look. You know, it'll have this sort of matte finish and it's going to look really nice, and that means it's ready to detail. But while I'm waiting for this to dry, I'm going to go do something nice for my mother because it's Mother's Day. Okay, so now that we're all finished with the flooding, we have to rebag some of these colors. You can choose any colors you'd like. Your box should come with 3 different bags to use. I'd say use the green for sure because we're going to have to go and do these leaves, add some different details with that. But as far as the other 2 colors go, I'd say it's completely up to the artist. You can do blue, white, pink, yellow, whatever you want really. But what I usually do when I'm rebagging is I push all of my icing down to the bottom of the bag actually, like so. Get as much down there as I can. And once I have that, I get my scissors, I cut the hole nice and wide, alright, like this, it's a big hole. I grab my extra bag, I place it in like so, and once it's in there, I make sure I grip it, so when I pull the original bag out, none of the icing will stay in, and it all squeezes into the new bag. This one's empty. And then once this is full, you can use anything really, a hair tie, a rubber band, a paper clip, some glue, some tape, anything you want. You can tie a knot, anything that keeps it from leaking out the end. So once you have your 3 colors to rebag it, we can go ahead and get started on this detail. Okay everybody, we're back. So my cookies I think are pretty much dry. They have that nice matte finish like I described earlier. I don't see any glossy looks really, so they should be ready for detailing. So I chose my 3 colors. I have my blue, my green, and my yellow. Like I said, you can do any colors you'd like, but I thought these ones were nice for detailing, so I just kind of went with it. But like I did in the very beginning, if you remember, I'm going to cut them nice and thin, like we did for outlining, because with detailing we don't want it thick, like we did with the flood. So I'm going to cut it to about that toothpick width, maybe a bit wider or thinner if you want, depending on how large you want these lines. But I'm going to cut them all first and go ahead and start on this blue flower here. So like I said, you can do any colors you want, but the basic design I'm going to do is I'm going to put this yellow dot right in the middle here. And I don't even move my hand actually. I just kind of put it over, squeeze it out, shake it a little bit so it spreads out, and it just forms a dot all by itself pretty much. You don't have to do anything really. After this, I grab my blue here. I'm going to go around like we did when we outlined it, but instead of just doing the basic lines, I'm going to add a little sort of curly Q loop here, just to give it some more character, you know. But I'm going to arch around like so, make that little loop, and once I'm done with that part, I'm going to go back in. On the original cookie we did it with white, but I'm just going to use blue some more because I kind of like that blue on blue look. So I'm just going to go to that yellow dot, add some loops around here. And this is where it gets fun because you guys can really do whatever you want, honestly. I mean, it's your cookie, you know, everything's flooded, so you can add any sort of detail you'd like. If you want sprinkles anywhere on here, you know, like I've said, it's all personal preference. But now that flower's over with, I'm going to move on to my pink flower, that is. I'm going to grab my yellow and sort of start in the middle. I'm not going to do the dot first like I did with the last one. I'm going to do a sort of swirling design around like this. So you just make these big sort of petals coming out from the middle. But we're not going to flood it in. We're just going to leave them as lines. And once that's down, I'm going to let that dry for a second actually and come back to it in a minute, because I'm going to go over with the white and then toss some sprinkles on top to give it a better look. But with this rose, all you really have to do, you can pick a spot to start. I'm going to start down here and just kind of swirl my way around, because roses are a very complicated look in nature and it's hard to get that down on a cookie, but we try our best. So I'm just going to start here. Kind of loop around like so. It's really just a bunch of different loops you're making. And just sort of crazy swirly until it meets in the middle here. And once I'm done with that part of my rose, I think that's all I'm going to do for the body. And with the leaf that's coming out the top, I think I'm going to go around again, just make it pop some more, and then bring it up here like so. And there's our leaf. It's pretty simple. And now this one's pretty fun. So we have our white shape here. That's the background to our grouping of leaves, whatever you call a group of leaves. And I'm going to actually just make one long stem across like so. And I'm going to make my first leaf here, second leaf here. It's just kind of easier to get the ends finished with first, so you can go in and add the rest. But I'm going to do these top ones because there's a bit more room. They're a bit easier. I'll save the hardest part for last. So you just kind of add in any sort of fun leaf shape you want. You can make them wider, thinner. You can make them a completely different color if you want. I just like that green look. Then I'm going to come down here, do pretty much the same thing. And what I'm going to do now is just let this sit for a minute or so. Let it kind of dry up a bit because it does take a second and I don't want to flood it yet. So now for this leaf here, this is the one that's actually, it can be a pretty fun design because you have so much freedom with these veins in here. So what I usually do, I'll start down here at the beginning of the leaf, come up, make a loop like so. And then I like to make more loops just coming out to the end of the leaf. You know, instead of just straight lines, it kind of gives it gives it a better look. It makes it more interesting, some more character, you know, instead of boring old lines. And after that, the mason jar is another fun shape where you have a lot of freedom to kind of do whatever you want. Because what I'm going to do is you could just kind of put some lines straight across, as you can see on this one here, and then write mom. You know, it's a good look. But just to give it some more character, I'm going to try out a different shape. I'm going to start up here, come across, make my lines, but make it one continuous line. After I make that one, I'm going to bring it down and then add this sort of swirly shape just to signify the bottom of the bottle. And after that, I'll come up here, add some more swirlies, you know, makes it fun for mom. And after that, you can write mom however you like. You can do, I mean, writing in all caps is the easiest, but make it look a bit nicer. I'm going to try and do this in cursive. So just do my M, and you can write it however you like. You don't even have to write mom if you don't want to. If you're just going to keep this for yourself, then I guess it doesn't really matter, but I have mom down, and that one should be ready to go. Okay, so now that I'm finished with the mason jar, I'm going to go back to that pink flower I did earlier. I said I was going to do the sprinkles on, so I'm going to grab my white. You can do any color. I think it looks nice with the white though. It kind of stands out over the rest of the look of the flowers. So I'm just going to go over it, like kind of like we did with the first one, just keep it in the same spot. Put a nice big circle in there. And once the center of the flower is down, I'm going to grab my sprinkles, which should come in your cookie decorating kit, and just let them fall over top. Once everything kind of dries, I can go in and wipe off any extra sprinkles I get on the rest of the flower, but yeah. And I'm going to go in and fix it with a toothpick, I think, just to kind of spread things around. Once that's down, I'm going to go and finish the rest of my leaves, I think. So I'm going to grab my green here. And it's very simple, you just fill in the leaves. You don't really have to move it around much. It's not a big area to fill. You don't have to cut it any wider to flood this because it's so small. But just do your best. Try and make it look nice for your mothers, you know. This is an important day. And we're almost done here, actually. I think after this cookie, we're pretty much finished. And you can go in and add more detail to anything you want because you'll probably have quite a bit of extra icing. So you don't have to keep it looking exactly like this. You don't have to stop where we are now. You can add more to the flowers, add more color to the mason jar. Really do whatever you want. Alright kiddos, now that we're all done with these cookies, I need you to go bring them to your mother, give her plenty of love, and I am gonna go finish making my mom her Mother's Day card.